Chapter 1: An Unexpected Encounter. I never imagined that a spontaneous decision to escape the city's relentless pace would lead me to a place where my heart would find its truest rhythm. My name is Emma Caldwell, a novelist with a penchant for romantic tales, yet utterly clueless when it comes to living one. Burned out and creatively stifled, I decided to rent a cabin in the countryside, hoping that the serene landscapes and fresh air would revive my inspiration. The moment I arrived at the quaint little cabin, nestled on the outskirts of a sprawling farm, I felt an inexplicable sense of peace. The fields stretched out like a golden sea, dotted with patches of green and the occasional grazing cow. It was a stark contrast to the concrete jungle I was used to, and I welcomed the change with open arms. My best friend Lily had been the one to push me into this adventure. "You need a break, Emma. Go find some inspiration in the simplicity of life," she had urged. So here I was, ready to immerse myself in the rural tranquility. On my first morning, I decided to explore the farm. I wandered through the fields, marveling at the simplicity and beauty of it all. As I walked further, I became so engrossed in the picturesque surroundings that I lost track of time and direction. Before I knew it, I found myself at the edge of a large cornfield, completely disoriented. "Hey, what are you doing here?" a deep voice called out, startling me. I turned to see a tall, rugged man striding toward me. He had a stern look on his face, his piercing blue eyes fixed on me with a mix of curiosity and annoyance. I'm sorry. I got lost," I stammered, feeling like a trespasser. "You must be the new tenant in the cabin," he said, his tone softening a bit. "I'm Jack, the owner of this farm." "Yes, I'm Emma," I replied, extending a hand. He hesitated for a moment before shaking it, his grip firm and warm. "You should be careful wandering around. It's easy to get lost if you're not familiar with the area," Jack said, his eyes scanning the horizon as if expecting trouble. "I'll keep that in mind," I replied sheepishly. "Thank you for rescuing me." He nodded, and we began walking back toward the cabin. Despite his initially gruff demeanor, I sensed a kindness in Jack. He seemed reserved, like someone who carried the weight of unspoken stories. "Why did you decide to stay here?" he asked, breaking the silence. "I'm a writer," I explained. "I needed a change of scenery to find some inspiration." Jack chuckled, a sound that seemed to surprise even him. "You came to the right place. There's plenty of inspiration out here, though most of it involves hard work and dirt." I smiled, feeling a strange connection to this man, who seemed as grounded as the earth beneath his boots. As we reached the cabin, Jack paused. "If you need anything, just let me know. I'm usually around." "Thank you, Jack," I said sincerely. "I appreciate it." He nodded again and walked away, leaving me with a sense of curiosity about this enigmatic farmer. Over the next few days, I settled into a routine, spending mornings writing and afternoons exploring the farm. I often saw Jack from a distance, working tirelessly in the fields, his dedication evident in every movement. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I decided to take a walk. I found Jack repairing a fence near the barn. I approached cautiously, not wanting to disturb him. "Do you need any help?" I offered. He looked up, surprise flickering in his eyes before he nodded. "Sure, if you don't mind getting your hands dirty." I smiled and joined him, holding the fence steady as he hammered in new nails. We worked in comfortable silence, the rhythmic sound of the hammering almost therapeutic. "Why did you become a farmer?" I asked, curiosity getting the better of me. Jack paused, his gaze distant. "It's a family farm, been in the family for generations. After my parents passed, it was up to me to keep it going." "I'm sorry," I said softly, sensing the depth of his loss. He shrugged, but there was a hint of sadness in his eyes. "It's hard work, but it's honest. And there's something about this land. It's a part of me." As the days turned into weeks, Jack and I began to share more moments like this. I found myself drawn to his quiet strength and the simplicity of life on the farm. And somewhere along the way, amidst the fields and the open skies, I felt a spark of inspiration reignite within me. Little did I know that this unexpected encounter was just the beginning of a journey that would change both our lives forever. Chapter 2: Growing Affections. As the days turned into weeks, the farm began to feel like home. The sounds of birds chirping at dawn, the earthy scent of freshly plowed fields, and the sight of the sun casting long shadows over the landscape filled me with a sense of peace I hadn't known I was missing. My mornings were spent writing, the words flowing effortlessly as I looked out over the rolling hills. The afternoons, however, were my favorite part of the day. These were the times I spent with Jack. Jack and I had developed an easy rhythm. I would find him working around the farm, and we would spend hours talking while we worked side by side. One particularly warm afternoon, I joined him in the barn where he was tending to the animals. The barn was cool and smelled of hay and livestock, a strangely comforting aroma that I was growing fond of. "Hey, city girl." Jack greeted me with a playful smile as I walked in. "Ready to get your hands dirty?" I rolled up my sleeves and grinned. "Absolutely. What's on the agenda today?" He handed me a bucket of feed. "We're feeding the animals. Think you can handle it?" I laughed, accepting the challenge. "I think I can manage." As we worked, I noticed the way Jack moved, confident and sure, but with a gentleness that belied his rugged exterior. Though he had a way with the animals that spoke of years of experience and a deep-seated care for them. I found myself admiring not just his strength, but his kindness as well. "Do you ever miss the city?" Jack asked suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence. I paused, considering his question. "Sometimes. But there's something about this place. It's so genuine. It's like I'm discovering a new part of myself here." He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Life out here is simple, but it's not easy. It takes a lot of work to keep things running." "I've noticed," I said with a smile, "but it's rewarding in its own way." Jack looked at me then, really looked at me, and I felt a warmth spread through me. "You're different from most people who come here," he said quietly. "You're not just passing through." His words lingered with me long after I left the barn. That evening, I sat on the porch of my cabin, watching the stars emerge one by one. I thought about Jack, about the way he seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders, and yet managed to find joy in the simplest things. There was a depth to him that I wanted to understand, a story I wanted to be a part of. The next day, Jack invited me to join him for a picnic by the river that bordered his property. It was a perfect day, clear skies and a gentle breeze. We spread out a blanket and shared a simple meal of sandwiches and fresh fruit. As we sat by the water, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. "Tell me about your writing," Jack said, leaning back on his elbows and looking at me with genuine interest. I shrugged, feeling a bit shy. "It's mostly romance. Stories about people finding love in unexpected places." He smiled, a teasing glint in his eye. "So any of your characters based on real people?" I laughed. "Maybe. Writers draw from life, after all." Jack's expression turned serious. "What about you? Have you ever been in love?" The question caught me off guard. I thought about my past relationships, none of which had ever felt as significant as the connection I was beginning to feel with Jack. "I thought I was, once, but it wasn't the right person." He nodded, as if he understood more than he was saying. "Love's a tricky thing. It can lift you up or break you down." We were silent for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. I wondered what kind of heartbreak Jack had experienced, what had left such a mark on him. Before I could ask, he stood up and extended a hand to me. "Come on," he said. "There's something I want to show you." Curious, I took his hand and let him lead me through a path that wound along the river. We walked in companionable silence, the sound of the water a soothing backdrop. Finally, we arrived at a small, secluded meadow, vibrant with wildflowers. In the middle stood a large, old oak tree, its branches spreading wide like a guardian of the land. "This was my mother's favorite spot," Jack said softly. "She used to bring me here when I was a kid, told me that no matter what happens, this place would always be here, always be a part of me." Touched by his openness, I squeezed his hand. "It's beautiful, Jack. Thank you for sharing it with me." He looked at me, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. "Emma, being with you, it feels right, like this is where you're supposed to be." I felt my heart skip a beat. "I feel the same way, Jack." As we stood there, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the warmth of shared moments, I realized that my heart was slowly being claimed by this farmer with a gentle soul, and I couldn't wait to see where this unexpected journey would take us. Chapter 3. The First Twist. Our days on the farm continued to blend into a serene rhythm, each moment with Jack becoming more precious than the last. I felt myself falling deeper for him with every passing day. But as the weeks turned into months, I couldn't shake the feeling that my time here was limited. My city life was calling, and with it, responsibilities I couldn't ignore. One morning, as I was finishing a chapter of my new novel, my phone buzzed with a message from my publisher, Mr. Collins. I hadn't heard from him in weeks, and the timing felt ominous. "Emma, we need you back in the city for your book launch. It's a big event. Your presence is non-negotiable." I stared at the message, a knot forming in my stomach. The thought of leaving the farm and Jack filled me with dread. Yet, my career was important. It was the reason I had come here in the first place, to find inspiration for my writing. That evening, I found Jack repairing the barn door. His face lit up when he saw me, but his smile faded as he noticed my troubled expression. "What's wrong, Emma?" he asked, concern evident in his eyes. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. I got a message from my publisher. They need me back in the city for my book launch. Jack's face became a mask of indifference, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. "So you're leaving?" "It's just for a few days," I said quickly, hoping to reassure him. "I promise I'll come back." He nodded, but his expression remained guarded. "I understand. You have your own life and responsibilities." The tension between us grew palpable, each of us retreating into our own thoughts. I spent the next few days packing and preparing for my trip, the impending separation weighing heavily on my heart. The night before my departure, Jack and I took a walk through the fields. The moon cast a silvery glow over the landscape, and the air was thick with unspoken words. "Jack," I began, my voice trembling, "I don't want to leave. This place, it means so much to me." He stopped walking and turned to face me, his eyes searching mine. "Then stay," he said simply, his voice raw with emotion. Tears welled up in my eyes. "I wish I could, but I have obligations in the city, my career." "Your career," he interrupted, a hint of bitterness creeping into his tone. "I get it, Emma, I do. But what about us? What about what we've built here?" "I'm not choosing my career over you," I insisted, my heart breaking at the pain in his eyes. "I'll come back, I promise." Jack shook his head, looking away. "People make promises all the time, Emma. I've heard them before." The next morning, as I boarded the bus to the city, I looked back at the farm, hoping to see Jack one last time. But he was nowhere in sight. My heart felt heavy, the excitement of the book launch overshadowed by the fear of what I might lose. Back in the city, the noise and bustle felt foreign after the tranquility of the farm. The book launch was a whirlwind of interviews, signings, and social events. I tried to focus on the positive, but my mind kept drifting back to Jack and the life I had left behind. Lily, always my confidant, noticed my distraction. "Emma, you're not yourself. What's going on?" I sighed, feeling the weight of my emotions. "It's Jack. I think I'm in love with him." "Then what are you doing here?" she asked, her tone matter-of-fact. "Go back to him. Don't let fear hold you back." Her words struck a chord within me. I realized that I was more afraid of losing Jack than anything else. The launch ended on a high note, but my heart wasn't in it. As soon as I could, I booked a ticket back to the farm, hoping it wasn't too late. When I arrived, the farm looked the same, but there was an undeniable tension in the air. I found Jack in the field, his back turned as he worked the soil. My heart pounded as I approached him, fear and hope battling within me. "Jack," I called softly. He turned, and for a moment, I saw the flicker of hurt in his eyes. "You're back." "I am," I said, stepping closer. "And I'm not leaving again." He stood up, wiping his hands on his jeans. "What about your career?" "I can write anywhere," I said firmly. "But I can't live without you." His expression softened, and he took a step towards me. "Emma, I was scared. Scared that you'd choose your life in the city over me." I reached out, taking his hands in mine. "I'm choosing you, Jack. I want to build a life here with you." He pulled me into his arms, holding me tightly as if afraid I might disappear. "I've missed you," he whispered. "I've missed you too," I replied, tears of relief streaming down my face. "I love you, Jack." "And I love you, Emma," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Welcome home." As we stood there, wrapped in each other's embrace, I knew that this was where I belonged. The farm, Jack, our love. It was the heart of my story, and I was ready to write our next chapter together. Chapter 4. Misunderstandings and realizations. Settling back into the farm was like slipping into a warm embrace. Jack and I quickly found our rhythm again, our bond stronger for having faced the possibility of losing each other. But as much as I tried to fully immerse myself in this new life, shadows from the past and uncertainties about the future lingered at the edges of my mind. One afternoon, while Jack was out running errands in town, I decided to tackle some writing. My laptop was perched on the kitchen table, sunlight streaming through the windows, casting a golden glow over everything. I opened an email from Mr. Collins, my publisher. Emma, your book launch was a great success. There's a lot of buzz, and we've had an incredible offer for a new book deal. However, it requires your presence in the city for meetings and promotions. Let's discuss the details soon. The excitement of the opportunity was quickly overshadowed by a deep sense of dread. I didn't want to uproot my life again, especially not after just finding my place here. I knew I needed to talk to Jack about it, but the conversation loomed like a dark cloud. Later that evening, Jack returned, his usual smile warming my heart. I tried to keep my worry at bay as we had dinner, but he sensed something was off. "You're quiet tonight," he remarked, his eyes studying me. I forced a smile, just thinking. He reached across the table, taking my hand in his. "What's on your mind?" Taking a deep breath, I decided to be honest. I got an email from my publisher. There's a new book deal, but it requires me to be in the city for meetings and promotions. Jack's expression hardened, and he pulled his hand back. "So, you're leaving again?" "No, that's not what I want," I said quickly. "But this is a big opportunity for my career. I need to figure out a way to balance both worlds." His eyes flashed with frustration. "You can't have it both ways, Emma. You chose to come back here to be with me. Now it feels like you're already looking for a way out." "That's not fair," I shot back, hurt by his words. "I love you, and I want to be here, but my career is also important to me. I'm trying to find a compromise." Jack stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "It sounds like your career is still your priority. Maybe this was a mistake." His words cut deep, and tears welled up in my eyes. "Why can't you see that I'm trying to make this work? Why can't you support me?" He shook his head, his expression pained. "I thought I could, but maybe I was wrong." Without another word, Jack walked out, leaving me standing in the kitchen, my heart aching. I felt like everything was unraveling, and I didn't know how to fix it. The next few days were tense. Jack and I avoided each other, the silence between us growing heavier with each passing moment. I threw myself into writing, trying to find solace in my work, but the words felt hollow. One evening, Lily called, sensing something was wrong. "Emma, you don't sound like yourself. What's going on?" I poured my heart out, telling her everything. "I don't know what to do, Lily. I love Jack, but I also love my career. Why does it have to be one or the other?" "Emma, you're not alone in this. Relationships are about compromise, but it sounds like you both need to communicate better. Have you really talked to Jack about how you feel?" Her words struck a chord, and I realized she was right. Jack and I had been talking at each other, not with each other. I needed to bridge the gap between us. That night, I found Jack in the barn, working late. The dim light cast shadows on his face, highlighting the tension etched into his features. Summoning my courage, I approached him. "Jack, we need to talk," I said softly. He looked up, surprise and weariness in his eyes. "I'm listening." I took a deep breath, letting my vulnerability show. "I'm scared, Jack. Scared of losing you, scared of giving up my career. But I'm more scared of not trying to make this work. I don't want to choose between you and my dreams. I want both, with you by my side." His expression softened, and he put down his tools, stepping closer. "Emma, I'm scared too. I've been hurt before, and I guess I'm afraid of getting hurt again. But I don't want to lose you either." "We can figure this out together," I said, reaching for his hand. "We just need to communicate, to understand each other's fears and dreams." He took my hand, squeezing it gently. "You're right. I've been so focused on my own fears that I didn't see how much this was hurting you too." We stood there, holding each other, the barn filled with the sounds of our quiet breathing. It was a start, a step towards healing the rift between us. And in that moment, I knew we had a chance, as long as we faced our challenges together. Over the next few weeks, Jack and I worked on finding a balance. I made plans to travel to the city for short trips while still making the farm my home base. Jack, in turn, supported my career, understanding that it was a part of who I was. Our love grew stronger as we navigated the complexities of our lives, proving that, with patience, communication, and understanding, we could overcome anything. As summer turned to fall, the farm thrived under our joint care. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: we were in this together, and that made all the difference. Chapter 5: The Second Twist and Resolution. With our newfound understanding, Jack and I fell into a harmonious routine. My occasional trips to the city became opportunities to cherish our time together even more. Each reunion on the farm was a celebration of our love and commitment. But just when I thought we had found our perfect balance, life threw us another curveball. One crisp autumn morning, I received a call from Mr. Collins. His voice was unusually serious. "Emma, I need to discuss something important with you. Can you come to the city for a meeting tomorrow?" "Sure," I replied, my heart sinking. "Is everything okay?" "We'll talk tomorrow," he said, hanging up before I could press for details. The unease from our last conversation returned, gnawing at me throughout the day. That evening, I told Jack about the call. "I have to go back to the city tomorrow," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Mr. Collins didn't say much, but it sounded urgent. Jack nodded, his expression calm. "I understand. We'll figure it out like we always do." His unwavering support gave me strength, and the next morning, I headed to the city with a mix of anticipation and dread. At Mr. Collins' office, I was greeted with a sense of foreboding. "Emma," Mr. Collins began, gesturing for me to sit, "we've received an incredible offer from a major publishing house. They want you to sign a multi-book deal and are offering a significant advance. But there's a catch." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What's the catch?" "They want you to relocate to the city permanently," he said, his eyes studying my reaction. "They believe you need to be here to fully engage with the literary community and meet their promotional requirements." The room seemed to spin, and I gripped the edge of the table. Moving back to the city permanently? It felt like a cruel twist of fate, just when I had found my place with Jack. "I can't do that," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "My life is on the farm now. My heart is there." Mr. Collins leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Think about it, Emma. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You've worked so hard for this." I left the meeting in a daze, my mind a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. The city, with all its opportunities and excitement, had once been my dream. But now it felt like a trap, threatening to pull me away from the life I loved. Back on the farm, I found Jack in the field, harvesting the last of the season's crops. His face lit up when he saw me, but his smile faded as he noticed my troubled expression. "Emma, what's wrong?" he asked, coming to my side. I took a deep breath, tears welling up in my eyes. "Mr. Collins wants me to move back to the city permanently. They're offering me a huge deal, but it means leaving here." Jack's face hardened for a moment, then softened with understanding. "And what do you want?" "I want to stay here with you," I said, my voice trembling. "But this opportunity, it's everything I've worked for." He took my hands in his eyes searching mine. "Emma, I won't stand in the way of your dreams, but I also don't want to lose you. We need to find a way to make this work." Over the next few days, Jack and I had many long, heartfelt conversations. We discussed our fears, our dreams, and how we could support each other without sacrificing what we each held dear. It was during one of these talks that Jack made a suggestion that changed everything. "What if we split our time?" he proposed one evening, as we sat by the fire. "You could spend part of the year in the city for your career, and the rest of the time here on the farm. We'll make it work." The idea was unconventional, but the more we talked about it, the more it made sense. It would require effort and flexibility, but it meant we wouldn't have to choose between our love and our dreams. With renewed hope, I returned to the city to negotiate the terms. I proposed our plan to Mr. Collins, who, after some consideration and discussions with the publishing house, agreed to the arrangement. They valued my talent enough to accommodate my unique situation. When I returned to the farm with the news, Jack lifted me off my feet in a joyous hug. "We did it, Emma. We found a way." As winter approached, we prepared for our first separation, knowing it was temporary and for the greater good. Our love had proven resilient, and this new chapter was a testament to our commitment to each other. The months in the city were challenging, but knowing I would return to the farm and Jack kept me grounded. We communicated daily, sharing our lives through calls and messages, and every reunion was sweeter than the last. By spring, we had settled into our new routine, our bond stronger for having navigated the challenges together. The farm was in full bloom, a symbol of our flourishing love. We had found a way to honor both our dreams and our relationship, proving that with love, determination, and a willingness to adapt, anything was possible. And so, under the wide open skies of the farm, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the warmth of our shared moments, I knew that this was the story I had always been meant to write, the story of our love, resilient and true, a story that would continue to grow and evolve, just like the fields we tended together.